Hello and welcome, fellow composers and producers. My name is Patrick Selina, and today I'd like to show you the newest Contact sample library from SAMPLELOGIC called Trailer Xpressions. It is mainly sound design sample library for trailer and cinematic music. And before I go ahead and show you all of the sounds and all the functionalities, let me just present a demo which I wrote using those sounds plus some obviously other musical elements, because as I said, it's mostly sound effects, sound design, so I used it mostly to emphasize the power and the feeling of the track, but it is built with synthesizers and some other elements like strings and brass, so it's more melodic. Okay, so here we go. Let me now briefly show you all of the sounds and GUI of this particular product. As you can see, here we have two folders, and by the way, this is a beta version, so I'm not really sure if it's gonna look the same way in a final product, but I think it could. And here we have two categories, ambiences and percussives. There is also one more thing which you should just notice and just be aware of that. This is a full Contact sample library, so it won't work with a player, Contact player. So just be aware of that. And going back to sounds, here we have ambiences, atmospheres, drones, noises, and stingers. And what you can expect? Well, here we have atmospheres, right? So I will just show you a couple of sounds. Yeah, so this is actually very great. I really like the idea of having so long atmospheres, because many times when I get some atmosphere sounds and they are like a couple of seconds long and I have to duplicate them, mix them together somehow and create some movement just to hide those transitions. And in this case, those atmospheres are pretty long, so you can use it very successfully even in cinematic scoring, not only trailer music. Okay, so let's now go to a GUI and some functionalities. Well, first of all, here we have a slider which allows us to offset the start of the sample, which is great. This is something what I love in here. The only problem is that you won't see this in every single patch. I'm not sure why is that, but probably it's only visible and it's only available in patches which doesn't work with the beat machine, probably, of Kontakt. So there are not you know, sliced loops and fixed to the tempo. So probably something, maybe this is the reason, I'm not really sure. The thing which I really love in SampleLogic libraries are these is this a particular button. Here we have a heart which allows you to make a favorite, and immediately you can see that the key changes color as well. So this is something what I used building this track which I just show you. I was using this because I was, you know, just looking for some interesting sounds and effects and hits and whooshes, because this is the library is all of that, full of that. And is really great because when you open the Kontakt again, you don't have to look for the sample. You can just see on the key which is your favorite. So this is great. This is the best thing in here for me, especially because I immediately forget which sound I really liked, and I have to just, you know, play them again to find that one, which I really loved. Okay, so this is it. The next thing, here we have pitch, and we can, you know, just use one octave high or low. We can just pitch shift every single sample. The only problem is, and this is something you just have to realize, and it might be a difficult sometimes to operate, is that you would have to probably automate the pitch by using, you know, just learn MIDI and automation, because if you change pitch for one sample, you actually change pitch for every single sample in this particular patch. So it's just a little bit of difficult sometimes to work, because if you change pitch for one sample and you just forgot that you used some other sound from the same patch in some other place in your track, you can just accidentally, you know, pitch it and you didn't want it, right? So this is something you just have to watch out. And I actually use that pitch, and I use automation to in this track to pitch one of the sounds to follow my chord progression. I will show you this in a minute. Okay, so let's go back to some functionalities. So here we have two effects, and these are actually some sort of like chain effects combined together. So energizer. This probably will be better if I show you this on some different sound, because on the background it might just sound a little bit strange and not so clear, but this is probably just some distortion, compression, and maybe some saturation. Right, so we have some sort of distortion, and here we have polisher, which I think it's a combination of EQ and probably some widening. So maybe, you know, widening plus EQ, or maybe EQ working on mid side. Not really sure. You can always just, if you really want to dig in, you can just always open this thing and just look here for effects which were used. Okay, going to the next thing. The lower side is very handy, especially this thing and this thing. This is something what I used all the time building this track, composing and producing. Attack, release, which is, you know, basic stuff, and the thing which I always love having in a Kontakt library, which is a low cut and high cut. This is something what I think it's like everybody should, every Kontakt sample developer should always put something like this in the library. I'm not really sure why most of them just don't because I hate going with every single instrument. I hate going back to my mixer and opening you know, just a simple regular studio EQ just to make a little bit of low cut or a little bit of high cut, and this is great, so I use that all the time. And in the middle we have delay and convolution reverb, and the delay is very simple. You have a bunch of presets, and some of those presets aren't so obvious, so you just have to listen how they work, because they don't have like, you know, the specific rhythm explanation. Well, here you have quarter and eighth and 16th delay, but the rest of it is just more creative, named more creatively. And here we have a convolution, and with the convolution we can actually do a little bit more than just a reverb. So but actually I think all of those presets are mostly based on some special effects. I think that they're mostly designed for doing some special effects, so I don't think there is even a regular reverb. So this is mostly special effects thing. Yeah, so yeah, probably those atmospheres aren't the best example, so I will go back to this, showing you some other sounds, perhaps some hits and some percussive sounds. It's gonna be probably more obvious how it works, and you will see what is possible to do with this library. Okay, so let's go now to drones. I will quickly and briefly show you some drones, and you can already see that I have some favorites here, which is great because I completely forgot what I have in this patch, and right now I can just immediately see that this one was my favorite, and this one. Yeah, so I probably used some of those in the track. Yeah, and just by, you know, using high cut, you can quickly create very cool sounding low drone, and this is what I really love about this. Noises. This probably gonna be loud. Yeah, extremely. So we can combine it with the convolution effect and create something more unique. Great stingers. Okay, so then let's now go to percussives. And by the way, I'm not really sure why it's all in percussives folder. Perhaps they will split it somehow, because actually we don't have only percussive sounds here. We have like alarms, like some sort of melodic also, or maybe not melodic but tonal effects in Brahms and in some of those risers and whooshes. So okay, plenty of sounds here. Let me start from scratch. Yeah, so these are tempo synced using Beat Machine, probably, I guess, in Kontakt. And the thing is about those particular patches, they don't really work well with some different time signatures, and I actually did a track in 3/8, as you can see. So I literally don't use any of those tempo synced patches because they don't work exactly as I like them to work. So I used, instead of those patches, I actually used something. Let me just open the thing here. I used the samples from the library itself, because SampleLogic in this particular library is actually, with this library, they are releasing not only contact instruments, but they also released all of those samples as a regular wave files. So this is the best thing you can expect, because you have both of two worlds. You have a great contact instrument, and you have all of the samples available. They are not encrypted, so you won't be able to access them like in many other libraries. And this is, for me, actually very, very interesting and very handy, especially because I really love taking some of the samples which I like and put it to some synthesizer, perhaps like PadShop in Cubase, which is a granular synthesizer, and just try to create something new with a sample, or to Omnisphere, which also has a granular synthesis, but it's also some sort of a sample player with a synthesis. So it's really great to have this opportunity sometimes to use those samples in a different way. Yeah, so I used couple of sounds from wave files directly in a track, but I will jump to that a little bit later. Let me now show you some booms. Really great. That's my favorite, as you can see. Yeah, so some of the sounds have this drummy flavor, so you could probably use them as a regular drum sound, but because it's only one sample, it's you just have to make something to get rid of the machine gun effect if you use that kind of samples. Yeah, so powerful drums. Yeah, and in this case, it's probably a good idea to use some of those convolution effects, because with the drum, you can really create something interesting, or even automate this. Let me try something else. Maybe Sector 9. This is cool. Completely different sound. More metallic. Whistler. Something. What could be interesting? Wake up call. Yeah, so it's blurring a sound and making more boomier. Okay, it's really crazy. Distorted, so mostly very, very loud and hard for our ears sounds. Okay, downers. Okay, let's go now to hits. Yeah, so those hits aren't probably so powerful as some other hits in some other libraries out there, but this is actually something good which I used in a more creative way, because I realized that I won't get, you know, so powerful hit just with one key, which makes me wonder, okay, so I need to combine some of those hits just to make something bigger. So this is actually what I did in a track. I used multiple hits. I think I don't have the original. Yeah, I don't have the original track because I deleted. Okay, so I won't show you this, but this is a hit combo, and the hit combo is actually a mixture of like 5 different hits, low, some medium low, some mid high, and some high, mixed together, compressed together, and then just bounced to the disk as a simple sample. So this is something what I did just to make a hit a little bit more powerful, and I also combined it after all with a boom. So most of those hits in my track are built with many other hits and with a boom as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit quiet because it's I have my mastering chain disabled, so the level is much lower than in a final track. Yeah, but I used this combined with a crash. Well, this is not actually a crash, it is a metal sound from the library, but I just call it a crash so that I know why I am using this sound. Yeah, so it's something like this, and here I have some percussion hits. Yeah, and here I have a boom. So all of those sounds together, they just create a much more interesting hit effect. So if you won't combine them, you will probably need to just use more compression and some sort of saturation just to make it more, just to make them sound bigger. But I think it is a great idea also to have some sort of samples which allows you to create something new by combining them, because probably if you would get if you would take one, you know, mega powerful hit from some other sample library and you would try to combine it with some other, you know, very powerful hit, you just would create some sort of smash. You would have to somehow filter them so they could work together. This is something what you can do, and I know people do that, but in this case you can just build a powerful hit by using those a little bit quieter sounds, not so compressed, not so processed. Well, they are processed, but they are not so heavily compressed, I guess. Okay, so I wanted to show you those hits, and I changed my track selection. Yeah, so with convolution, that's interesting. This is really cool. Yeah, I think I would use it somewhere. Okay, so let's try hits 2. Yeah, so some of them are quite powerful, so it's very good thing to combine them and, you know, make something very, very big and loud. Okay, impacts would be probably some more tonal. Maybe not. Oh. this is more tonal. Okay. All great stuff. Every sound is really interesting. Okay, let's see some metals. Oh, and this particular patch contains a very hard and processed metal sounds, but when I was working on a track, I needed some sort of you know, high rhythm just to make the groove a little bit more obvious, and you know, just to add a little bit of my more high end to the track itself. So I used those metals here as a hi-hat. So it is actually made with those samples, but what I did, I turned the release to very low value, so it's very short, so I get very short very short, yeah, sounds like this. And I also used probably very heavily low cut, yeah, to get this some sort of hi-hat sound. And I also used some effect on my insert chain. Yeah, I used meta filter from Waves, just to add some movement. So without it, it's like this. Very simple, but it works pretty well for a track. It gives it a little bit more movement, and the groove is you know, going on. And I also use those metals just for hits, for some accents. Yeah. So it's probably the same single sample over and over again 4 times. Okay, and here I have metals with a delay. Yeah, I used something like that. Yeah. So we have the ping pong, and in this case I used a replica delay from Native Instruments because I actually with the reverbs and with delays, I don't really like using delays, especially delays inside of the Kontakt. Well, I know it's quick, especially if you have some cool presets like those, but when I work on mixing, I very often change the delay because I realize that it's sometimes the feedback is too long because, you know, it's repeating like forever, and I want to make it shorter, or the rhythm is wrong and I want to change it. So it's just much more easy to me if I have it in my mixer, because I just can, you know, open my delay in a mixer, and I don't have to look for it in a Kontakt instrument. Okay, so let me go back now to those sounds because I didn't finish. Right? So here I have metals. Okay, and here we have processed percussion. Oh. Okay. This is cool. Let me just favor this. Yeah, I used some of those as a layer in my main hit combo. Okay, and here we have pulses, and I actually used one of those, probably this one. I used one of those pulses, but as I told you before, they are actually loops, and they use a beat machine in Kontakt, which didn't work for me, particularly in this track. Maybe because the time signature is not common. So I only use the beginning of the sample. Let me just look for that. Okay, this is it. I think this is it. Pulse low. Let me open. Yeah, this is a pulse. And what I did, I actually used some automation here to change pitch. Very simple, but maybe it's not the best way to pitch a sample inside of the Kontakt, because I know some other libraries has like additional keys down here for key switching the tone, but it only works for samples which are already pitched to some certain key. But in this case, all of those samples are like all over the place in terms of scale, so it probably wouldn't work in this case. So that's why probably, I don't really know, because I didn't even ask, but I think they probably used this pitch slider because it wouldn't be possible to use key switches. Maybe. Okay. So let's now move on to some other sounds. What else we got? We got some reverses. This is a reverse. Yeah, so now you can see how the cursor works here. So it's also a loop, and it jumps from here to here, probably because the time signature is not a common one. Or maybe it's because of the tempo. Okay, here we have some stingers. Sorry, scrapes, not stingers, scrapes. This is cool for some horror film. Okay, so let's see some suckbacks. Okay. Wishers banks. wait. I didn't even use a fracture of those sounds in a track. Well, you know, it would be probably too much if you would try to use them all, because it should help, you know, to build the power and a contrast in a trailer track. But probably in some other trailer music, like typical sound design, you know, booms and hits and swoosh and whooshes, it probably would work also really well. Okay, and now here we have some regular whooshes. Not so regular to me, really. It's really interesting for me that all of those samples have some creative and interesting tail, because most of the trailer samples, like whooshes, they have, you know, like the beginning, the whoosh, the hit at the end, and then just a reverb as a tail. But in here you have some sort of additional sounds, some grainy, sometimes some metallic things going on the tail. So this is very interesting to me. Okay, yeah, so this is it. That's all. So now let me jump back to my track, and I will just show you a couple of things which I didn't cover yet. Okay, so here we have those wave files which I mentioned, and I use them mostly for hits, but also at the end for some sound design elements, because it would be just, you know, waste of time and too difficult for me to program this in Kontakt, especially if I wanted to create some automation. And I actually made something here with this Bram. I took the Bram sample and I used pitch shifting just to create this going down effect at the end, from the half of the sample to the end is going down like 3 semitones, I guess. So I made this with just, you know, regular pitch shift in Cubase, and just use an envelope and did something like this, you know. Yeah, so now would be the doubled effect, but this is something what I did, and it would, you know, it would be possible probably to do in Kontakt, but you know, using a pitch bend probably, but I wanted to do it right here because it was just faster for me. Okay, so the next thing which I did, I created some sort of a shutter or stutter, because I guess those two names are correct for this kind of effect. I used some of the reverse samples or metal, like in here, and I probably, with the metal, I probably reversed this, and I added chopper and some auto panning just to get this stutter effect. Yeah, because I realized there are now there are no stutters in this particular library, and I wanted badly to use a sound like that, so I just decided to make it by myself, just by, you know, reversing some of the sounds and using a chopper. And the next thing which I also did here, oh yeah, this is a siren. I wanted to have some sort of scream at the end of the Bram, because here we have the Bram, right? And I wanted, at the end of this falling down, I wanted to have some sort of squeak, some sort of scream. So I used a siren, but I didn't want the beginning of the siren, so I used the fade in, and I used a driver to create the screaming effect at the end. And I honestly, I was like mangling those two knobs for 10 or 15 minutes just to find the right setting to get the scream at exact frequency as I wanted to have. Yeah, so the squeak which you hear at the end, and which is also, by the way, delayed, it's actually a result of using this distortion. So without distortion, and maybe I will turn off those as well. Yeah, so the driver is giving this squeak at the end. Okay, so that's almost everything. Here I have a riser, which probably isn't even changed at all. Yeah, it has only some probably low cut. Yeah, just a low cut, and some sort of compression just to make the dynamics a little bit lower, you know, to boost the volume of the track. So some risers. And here I have a Bram. Okay, and here we have some whoosh. Yeah, the whoosh, actually I used this and combined it with a hit. So sometimes, and in this case we have like, you know, 5 of them, but in most cases it's only an accent of the beginning of some specific part of the track. So it's combined with another whoosh, which is here, and it's also combined with a hit. And the thing which I did here on automation, it is actually automation of EQ, which is right now disabled. I'm not really sure why, because it shouldn't be disabled. What's going on? I guess my Cubase, it has some problem. This is really awkward. Oh, probably it's freezed. Yeah, it's freezed. Yeah, so there is a automation, but it's freezed. Okay, my bad. Yeah, so I used an automation just to get the high pass filter to just reveal high frequencies while the whoosh is going to the hit, and then go back after the hit. So yeah, and I freeze this because I usually don't freeze it, but I had a problem with the Cubase export. I was getting some glitches at the export, so I decided to freeze some of the tracks, especially those one with some heavy processing, to see if it's gonna help. And I just forgot to unfreeze it. Yeah, so here I have EQ. So now you can see how it works. Okay, yeah, so I think that's it. Here I have some low hit at the end, and probably that's everything. Everything which you see here are all of the instruments which are not from the SampleLogic library. So some strings and some synthesizers, and sorry. Yeah, and here we have only the trailer Xpressions, tracks and samples. So like this thing. Yeah, and everything combines together. Yeah, and the last thing Let me just solo SAMPLELOGIC trailer expressions. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you like it, please like, please subscribe and give me a comment. If you have any question regarding this library or maybe some other thing that you'd like to ask, just go ahead and don't hesitate. Thank you again and hope to see you soon. Bye.